That's wrong. And guess what? I've been trying for years and years, the U.S. Senator, to end it, and I'm ending it now. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, the law I proposed and signed, not one Republican, I might add, voted for it, we finally beat Big Pharma. Caps total prescription drug costs for seniors in Medicare at $2,000 a year, even for expensive drugs. Maximum. Right now, for example, this is already passed. I got it passed already. We got it passed. That beginning in the next year, at the end of this term, what's going to happen is the cost for all the prescription drugs for seniors, including cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year, will not have to pay more than $2,000 a year, period. Working with Maggie and Jeannie, I want to cap prescription drug costs to $2,000 a year for Rose and for everyone, not just seniors. It could be transformational. But that's not all. Instead of paying as much as $400 a month for insulin for seniors with diabetes, you now only have to pay $35 a month. Well, you know why we did that? I've been fighting that a long time, too. I bet every one of you knows somebody who needs insulin for diabetes, yourself or somebody else. Well, it costs as much as $400 a month. You know how much it costs to make that? $10, T-E-N, $10. And the guy who came up with he didn't want to patent it because he wanted to make sure everybody had access to it. So if you add everything, including the cost of packaging it, it's $13. They're still making 3 times more than they would ordinarily. They're not getting cheated. They're just going to pay what other people pay around the world. And now with Jeannie's leadership and Maggie's partnership, that's not the entire, and the entire delegation that's here, I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 for every American. Every American. When I first got it passed, it included all Americans. When we got it reauthorized, the other team wouldn't do it, so only for seniors. Look, for years people talked about this, but we finally got it done and gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prescription costs, just like the VA's been able to do for veterans for a long, long time. It's not just saving seniors money, it's saving every taxpayer money. It's cutting the federal deficit. Just what we've just done so far. Cut the federal deficit over time by $160 billion. That's $160 billion Medicare does not have to pay out because they're paying a rational price for this drug, not just this exorbitant price from before. Look, this year Medicare is negotiating lower prices for some of the costliest drugs on the market that treat everything from heart disease to arthritis. That's in the law that we've already passed. Now it's time to go further and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for even more drugs over the next decade. Folks, if we're able to do that, we'll not only save lives, we're going to save taxpayers another estimated $200 billion. $200 billion taxpayers will not have to pay the drug companies for exorbitant prices that aren't warranted. And folks, with Maggie and your delegation's help, I've already cut the federal deficit by $1 trillion. Signed a bipartisan budget deal to cut another $1 trillion over the next decade, if they stick with the deal. And now, it's my goal to cut the federal debt even more by making big corporations and the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. I'm not anti-corporation. I represent the state of Delaware. More corporations incorporated in Delaware than every other state in America combined. But guess what? But I'm a capitalist, man. Make all the money you want. Just begin to pay your fair share of taxes. You may remember the big fight I had not long ago, and the reason I was able to cut the deficit already by $7 billion in the first year. And that was because we found out that we wanted to make sure that there were 50 corporations that made $40 billion in 2021. Didn't pay a penny in taxes. I did an awful thing. I convinced us all to raise it to 15%. Isn't that awful? And it paid for everything that we've paid for what we've done so far and still cut the deficit. Look, a fair tax code is how we invest in things that make this country great, from health care, education, defense, and so much more, research, development. But here's the deal. The last administration enacted a $2 trillion tax cut. $2 trillion tax cut that benefits the very wealthy in the top 1%. the biggest corporations, and exploded the federal deficit. Last administration added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Debt. Not, you turn on TV and you think he's telling the truth. Debt. Does anybody here think the tax code is fair? Raise your hand. Well, I don't think so either. I think if I don't want to get in trouble with the press, but I bet they wouldn't even raise their hands. Do you really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax breaks? Because that's what he wants to do. His tax cut's about to expire, and he wants to add another $2 trillion tax cut. Well, I'm going to keep fighting like hell to make it fair. Under my plan, as I said, I ran for president. I promised nobody, well, as long as I'm president, who earns less than $400,000, it's a lot more than I ever made, will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody. Not a single cent. Nobody will pay a single penny more, and they haven't thus far. Folks, it's about fundamental fairness. Here's another example. Folks, Obamacare became known as the Affordable Care Act. And by the way, it's still a very big deal. Over 100 million of Americans can no longer be denied health insurance because of a pre-existing condition. But my predecessor and many Republicans want to take that away, take that protection away by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let it happen. We stopped them literally 50 times, 50 times in the last administration. And we're going to stop them again. Folks, we all miss someone who cast a deciding vote to protect the Affordable Care Act. Not long ago, my buddy John McCain passed away. My predecessor, friend, that's how he ended his career, voting no, so they couldn't cut it. John loved New Hampshire, and he still drives my predecessor crazy, even though John's long gone. But that's John. My mother would say, God love him. Folks, working with your delegation, I'm protecting and expanding the Affordable Care Act. A record-breaking 21 million Americans have signed up for health care under the ACA, including 65,000 folks right here in New Hampshire. I enacted tax credits that save on average $800 per person per year, reducing health care premiums for millions of working families under the Affordable Care Act. But those tax credits expire next year, and I'm calling on Congress to make and expand the Affordable Care Act tax credits and make them permanent. Make them permanent. Many of my Republican friends want to put Social Security and Medicare back on the chopping block again. If anyone tries to cut Social Security and Medicare or raise the retirement age again, I will stop them. Working people built this country. They pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. Folks, we have two ways to go at Social Security and Medicare. Republicans will cut Social Security and Medicare to give us more tax cuts for the wealthy. Even this morning, Donald Trump said cuts to Social Security and Medicare are on the table again. When asked if he changed his position, he said, quote, there's a lot you can do in terms of cutting. Tremendous amount of things you can cut. Let me be precise. Tremendous amount of things you can do, not cut. He said, but the bottom line is, he's still at it. I'm never going to allow that to happen. I won't cut Social Security. I won't cut Medicare. Instead of cutting Medicare and give tax breaks to the wealthy, I will protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare and make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share. In fact, my budget plan would preserve Medicare benefits in this Medicare trust fund. Because Maggie's leadership, because of it, I'm also cracking down on surprise medical bills. Here's the deal. You go out there and you do your homework. You choose the hospital if you need a hospital based on what your insurance company will cover. And then when you get the bill, there's a surprise charge because the hospital assigned an anesthesiologist or a doc that isn't under your control, isn't in your insurance. That surprise bill can add up to thousands of dollars, thousands. Thanks to Maggie, we ended that surprise billing, and we're protecting 1 million Americans. Every single month from those surprise bills. Folks, look, My budget also cracks down on what's called facility fees for telemedicine. You get charged an extra fee if you're in a rural area and you have a virtual visit where neither you nor the doc is actually in the facility. That's just another junk fee. It's wrong. We got to end it. These surprise medical bills, junk fees, add up to hundreds of dollars for ordinary families like the one I grew up in, and it makes a difference, although it does generate $20 billion in profit. That's what it does. Let me close with this. 4 years ago, this week, before I came to office, our country was hit with the biggest, worst pandemic and economic crisis in a century. Remember the anxiety and the fear? Record job losses, raging virus that would take more than 1 million American lives and leave millions of loved ones behind. It was estimated for every one who died, left behind 8 significant people: mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, an empty chair at the table. The mental health crisis that resulted from the isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, who failed the most basic of any duty a president owes the American people, a duty to care. I believe that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to uphold the duty to care and get us through one of the toughest periods in our nation's history. And we have. Building a future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not just the top down. When the middle grows, the bottom has a chance, the poor have an opportunity, and the wealthy still do very well. They still do very well. Investing in all America and all Americans to make sure everyone has a fair shot. We leave nobody behind, nobody. Our plan is working and America is coming back. 4 years later, the pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to help beat cancer, turning a setback into a comeback. That's the American story. And I believe we're moving into a future where health care is a right, not a privilege in America. That's why. That's why I've never been more optimistic about our future. We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. Nothing, seriously, not a joke. We're the only country that's ever come out of every crisis stronger than we went in. Stronger than we went in. And folks, I'll give you one little example. You know, I may not get it done, but if you give me a Congress, I will. No, I'm serious. I may not get it done, but here's the deal. If you know how much, we have 1,000 billionaires in America. That's not a bad thing, per se. You know what their average tax rate is? 8.2% taxes. Anybody want to trade their tax rate? No, I'm serious. If we just charge them, I had a tax code that charged them 25%, not the highest rate, 25%. You know how much that would raise over the next 10 years? $400 billion. $40 billion a year. Imagine what we could do. From cutting the deficit to providing for child care, to providing health care, to continue to provide our military with all they need. So folks, look, this is not beyond our capacity. We just have to listen. We've got to tell people what we want to do and hope that they've figured out that what is going on with the last guy, if it gets repeated, because if he gets elected, he's publicly stated he'd try to repeal every single thing we've done so far. 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, they go on and on. But people still need help. They still need help. Those people, the folks sitting at the kitchen table, they still need some help on the day-to-day things. And we're going to work on those as well. But at any rate, I'm taking too much of your time. You're very gracious. Thank you all very much for being here. And as my mother would say, God bless you all. Thank you. And God protect our troops. Thank
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this hearing to order and welcome to our witnesses, Director of National
for a while now. And we've, with the help of your delegation, and that's not hyperbole, that's a fact, with the help of your delegation, we got things passed that no one thought we could get passed. Everything from the infrastructure bill to veterans bills, all the stuff we got passed. And much of it without a single solitary Republican vote, not one. But we knew it's going to take a little time for people to begin to see the benefits of it, because it's just a big, big country, and there's a lot. Hi, how are you? How doing? I'll keep going. Don't stop because of me. What's your name? Rosie, my name's Joe. Is this your big brother? Is he okay? Hey, man. No, my dad used to say, you got one job. Keep the boys away from your sister. But all kidding aside, look, I think we have enormous opportunities, enormous opportunities. The country's ready to get up and go. And everything from what we've been able to do in a general sense, 15 million new jobs, that's good, but it doesn't really connect yet to people, even though they're benefiting from it. Inflation down from 9% to 3%, 800,000 manufacturing jobs. But my dad used to have an expression. He said, Joe, your job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your integrity. It's about your dignity. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, it's going to be okay. And one of the main things I try to do, and I'm going to continue to do, God willing, if we get reelected, is finish the job by continuing to focus on the middle class, because when the middle class does well, the poor have a way up, and the wealthy still do very well. They still do very well. But they got to start paying their fair share. And I drive my staff crazy because I say, how can we be the finest nation, the greatest nation in the world if we have a second-rate education system? How can we be the finest nation in the world if we don't invest in research and development? How can we be the finest nation in the world without the best education system? I mean, just across the board, healthcare system. How can we do that? And, I think the American people get it. If you take a look at, I know the press is here, and they're all wonderful people. I don't know why they don't like me a lot more than Trump, but the way he talks about you guys. But anyway, that's a joke. I'm kidding. I shouldn't even be kidding with you. I'll pay a price for having said that. But look, everything we've done, if you take a look at it, and none of the polling matters much more now. It's way out. But number two, polling has kind of changed a lot, too. It's not nearly as accurate. It's not nearly as capable as it was before, because you got to make 6 zillion calls to get one person on their cell phone, et cetera. But one of the things is that there's 3 things I want to do. One, I want to restore the soul of this country. When I ran the first time, I meant it. Well, and that sounds like hyperbole, but I just mean basic dignity, just basic sense of dignity, and just treating people with respect. I mean, I know I don't look it, but I've been around a long while. But all kidding aside, think about it. I doubt whether those of you who've been around half the time I've been around thought it would ever get to this point in the way we treat one another in politics. It's just not healthy. The reason Barack asked me to be his vice president was because of my background in foreign policy, and I had spent an awful lot of time traveling the world and knew almost every major world leader, and know them all now as well. They're wondering about us. Well, they're wondering about whether we are the same country we have advertised ourselves to be since into World War II. There's a lot at stake, and it's about protecting us, not just them. So when I talk about, everybody wonders why I talk in the middle of a campaign about dealing with making sure that Ukraine is taken care of. Well, the message that the president says when he says to Putin, come on, if they don't pay their dues, you just come in, do whatever the hell you want. There's things that, anyway, the same thing with regard to dealing with the border. The border, first bill I ever introduced as a president of the United States was essentially what got passed this time out, led by a Republican, by the conservative Republican, who they're vilifying now for having worked out this deal. But look, what we need is just an orderly process at the border, not to keep, they're not vermin, they're not scum, they're not people who are all criminals coming. It's just, you know, I think the American people don't get it. But the way it's being run now is just not, well, I'm going on too long. But look, healthcare is critically important. I've been fighting from the time I was a kid in the Senate to take on the big pharma companies. The idea that it costs $10 to make insulin, $13 to package it all toll, and they're selling for $400 is crazy. It's a ripoff. If you got in Air Force One with me, flew out of here, and I flew you to Toronto, to Berlin, to Rome, to any place in the world, when you brought your prescription with you, whatever it is, for whatever product, you're going to pay 40 to 60% less in any country you land in, but made by the same company. So it's just about being fair, and the process is, it also cuts the deficit. What we did so far, just reducing the cost of insulin from an average of somewhere around $400 a month to $35 a month. Well, it's not. It doesn't just help. It doesn't just help the patient. It saved the country $160 billion. $160 billion. They're paying out less because the Medicare didn't have to pay it. And the same way with regard to the Affordable Care Act. You know, $800. If you have thousands of people here in your state qualifying for it, well over 100,000 across the country doing it. More than that, quite frankly, significantly more. And the end result of it is that if you didn't have that Affordable Care Act and you had a pre-existing condition, you couldn't afford insurance. So it's just about basic fairness, just basic decency. By the way, I'll stop talking. I'll take questions if you want me to. But one of the things that I found interesting is Trump keeps talking about the deficit. Well, he raised the deficit more in 4 years than any president in American history. We've cut it. We've done all this and we've cut the deficit. But it's just about, you know, we've never lived up to, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men and women are created equal, endowed with their creator, etc. We've never fully lived up to it. We've never walked away from it. This guy wants to walk away from it. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he wants to do. While I was down in Georgia working on health care and making sure that we had the support of all the minority organizations in the country that we support so strongly, he was the Viktor Orban, who talked about democracy being a problem and telling me how much he understood him and agreed with him. Come on. I mean, so this is not who we are. We got to make sure that we communicate that. I'm going to be working like the devil, and I'm looking forward to doing more and more of these events than the big events, because that's how I used to campaign. You've campaigned with me before. Few times. But really, it's just getting to look people in the eye, get their feelings. They tell you the truth when they're talking to them. Anyway, am I allowed to take any questions? Anybody here at staff?